Hey, Gavin.
Hey, Louie.
Surprise, bitch.
Why have you called this meeting?
I call this, what's the Society for, like, Secrets and Teenagers?
The Midnight Society?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
The Society for Secrets and Teenagers, correct.
That's
correct.
That's what I call it.
Are you afraid of when it's no longer light? That was the off-brand version that you grew up with.
Hi, everyone. This is the Mixed Reviews.
We are a film podcast in which we take a film subject, such as an actor, director, or a mini genre, and we give you a full history, and then we talk about what's good and what's not so good. We take those reviews and we'll mix them up.
But not this time, honey.
No.
Gavin, I've called you here today because, as you know, I've been a busy little bee during this pandemic.
You have.
And how many episodes ago was Mandy Moore? It was like 3.
Mandy Moore was 2 episodes ago, I want to say.
Yeah.
Or 3. 3,
right?
Because, yeah.
And
whatever, we're sober.
Yeah, we're sober. It's fine. If you listen to our Mandy Moore episode, you will remember that I particularly was taken by the movie American Dreamz.
Correct.
And also, if, I don't know, you have stalked me on the internet, you might know that I sometimes do some journalism things. And I really just wanted to read and write more about American Dreamz. And I thought the most interesting character to me was the character of Omar, who is played by Sam Golzari. And I thought, what a gag. Because obviously I was like, I'm never going to fucking talk to Mandy Moore. Like, you know. But I was like, I wonder if I can find Sam Golzari. Like, what is he up to? What's his deal? And so little old sneaky Veronica Mars me just typed his name in on Instagram. And I found him on Instagram. And I just DM'd him. I literally slid into the DMs. So I just said, hey, I'm a journalist, and I would love to talk to you about American Dreamz for a story that I would like to write. Literally I had not talked to an editor. There was no, my kind of gig right now for doing these things is like, I'll do the reporting just because I want to. And then, you know, if an editor or a publisher wants it, like, I'll write it up for them.
I have said many times in my life, if you want to do the work, sometimes you got to make your own. So yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, Gavin. Literally, I was like, guys, it's kind of really easy to do journalism. You just have to fucking do it. Mm-hmm. And now more than ever, I mean, I literally DM'd this guy, and surprise, surprise, a couple weeks later, he messaged me back and said, hey, yeah, I'd love to jump on a phone call and talk to you about this. So what you're about to hear is an edited form of that conversation. And so you might hear me like typing away. Also, I mean, the biggest thing, obviously, I told you, Gavin, I was recording on my computer as I was talking to Sam, and I realized my levels were so low, and I was like, something has gone awry, and I don't have the bandwidth to figure it out. So I just whipped up my phone and started recording on my phone. So it might sound different. It's not going to sound as good as our normal episodes. And literally, you're going to get like, it's 10 minutes into our conversation. So you didn't miss much, or you won't have missed much. But we had just kind of talked about, he said, you know, that the movie was made... American Idol was like at the peak of its, you know, fame and popularity. So everyone thought that American Idol would be like the ticket in. People would want to go see this movie. We talked a little bit about satire and Paul Weiss, who he says is an artist and such a great guy. Paul Weiss was the director and
writer.
And he had made About a Boy. He had a lot of cultural cachet to make this movie. And we talk a little bit about in the conversation about like how Universal was like, yeah, here's some money to make this very fucking weird movie about, you know, satirizing the war in 2007, or 2006, I'm sorry, where literally, you know, that was a time when all these war movies were coming out. And he had this great quote that is not in this conversation. He says, if satire was on its last legs, then it's absolutely dead now. Because I was mostly just thinking about, you know, this movie hits different now. It hits different watching it now because as ridiculous as the movie is, the world we're living in now is somehow more fucked up and crazy.
Yeah, it's beyond parody.
Yeah. So this is my conversation with Sam Golzari. He's a UCLA theater graduate. And his first audition ever after he graduated was for American Dreamz, and he got it, baby. The sentence that you're going to hear going into is he's telling me a story about how he had gotten a script for another movie that was starring Justin Long, and he couldn't find his character in the script anywhere, so he showed up to the audition, and at the audition, they hand him a different script, and they're like, all right, ready to go? And that's where we start.
And just a heads up, before checking out this interview, make sure to go watch American Dreamz on HBO Max or any other way that you want to rent it, because this interview contains spoilers.
And then I get the, this is what happened. They gave us the name of that script, and they told me the name of the character. And I go in the script, and I don't see this character anywhere in that script. So I just show up, and they're like, okay, so this movie, they gave me the sides right there, and they're like, okay, here are the sides. We'll do the audition in 10 minutes. And they're like, oh, and by the way, it's a movie with Hugh Grant, Dennis Quaid, Willem Dafoe, Mandy Moore. And I'm like, I had done a sleep commercial at the time.
Okay.
I had done a Universal Studios commercial where I'm the third guy back going, woo! And I had been on some TV show as the waiter with like one line.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I got the sides, and I just really I just went in there and did it, and the casting director actually said, man, that was really great. You don't look Middle Eastern, really. So when I call you back, we're just saying, you don't look Middle Eastern, kind of letting me know.
Right.
And so my mom at that time just randomly just decided to take a makeup class. And so for the callback, my mom darkened me up with some makeup. And I went in, and the thing is, I have a background in singing and music, and like as a little kid, I grew up doing Michael Jackson impersonations at like 4, and I make music. I'm in a band, so dancing and singing is something like the character really, in a way, was like I was the one person that could really play that role.
Right.
The innocence that he had, like the joy of the music, and like I went in, and I had just gotten done with UCLA, and I had friends from in the musical theater department. So when I went in, like those dance moves that I was doing in the film, some of them were just straight out of my audition that me and my friends put together. And I went in and I met, and the crazy thing was I did the callback. And then I had gone to London to visit family. And I got the call you got the call back. So I flew back.
Wow.
It was like this, it's really exciting. I flew back, met with Paul, had the audition, and it was just like, I felt so confident. I felt so, and Paul is a very sweet, gentle guy, like a really good guy. So I did the audition. We had a great conversation. I told him about my family escaped from Iran when I was 3 during the revolution. So I told him my story, and I did the audition, and sang and acted, and it just really flowed. And then also at that time, I had a friend from UCLA that was working at Universal. Mm-hmm. And so he was working like in the casting. And so he would call me and say, dude, they really liked you. And so then like 2 hours before my agent called me, he called me and said, hey, you got the role.
Whoa.
And so for me, it was just unbelievable to like all of a sudden I'd trained for years. I was confident in my acting, but the fact that all of a sudden I was working on this major film on a project that I believed in was really an unbelievable gift, and gave me the opportunity to work for years, and gave me my start. And it's one of the best experiences. Like working with Paul, I really learned so much. The one thing that was awesome was they let me be on set every day. So of all the actors, my character had the most shooting days, even though there's all these big name stars. My character was the most. So every day that I wasn't working, Paul would let me come on set. So when they were doing all the White House stuff, mm-hmm. they actually shot that on the West Wing set.
Oh, cool.
That's the West Wing
Amazing.
office.
Yeah.
So I got to go there every day. I wasn't called, but they would let me come. I'd be watching the DP. I'd be watching how everyone's working. Paul would really invited me in to see the process. So to me, I learned the filmmaking process and how to work in film because I've never really done it to that point.
Right.
So it was an unbelievable experience. Unbelievable experience.
So you mentioned, you, in many ways, you were this character, like you've checked every single box of, Omar. And when you're reading the script, I mean, and I've seen interviews with, Mandy Moore and other people saying, I read the script and it was just so funny.
Well, for me, I read the script and the first thing that was clear to me was that he was actually the only real, if you want to talk about like having goodness,
mm-hmm.
or like a good heart, really, he's the only one.
Yeah.
Everyone else has alternative motives. Every single one.
Mm-hmm.
Mandy does. Hugh. Everyone had like some kind of alternative, and they might have changed.
Right.
But he was the one guy that was just good and like had a good heart. And so the fact that I saw that, because I'm even if it was the beginning of my career, I would not have been open to doing roles that I felt were portrayed malicious and negative like that. Like I'd rather not do a film than do something that I felt was disrespecting my heritage. That's like, I remember when I was first starting, I was wondering, should I change my last name to Golzari? Is not even that difficult, but like, should I make it something more? I said, no, I want to acknowledge who I am and represent.
Right.
And as time has progressed, it's become more accepted too.
Right. And what's wild is like you even said though, at the beginning, they were like, you don't look Middle Eastern enough. And so like, there's always like the double, I mean, I get that all the time. Like people say like, you don't look Mexican. And it's like, what is that? What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, exactly. So, I really just fell in love with the character so much. I fell in love with the character, and coming from a theater background and like studying theater and understanding the new history and nuance of like dramaturgy, like I read the script and I understood what Paul was attempting.
Right.
I wasn't just seeing it as a funny film. I understood the underlying things he was getting at. So I just thought it was a fantastic script, and it's one of those things, even at the time you're reading, you're like, wow, like, that's crazy that they're making, like, the fact that anyone gave him money to make this film was, at the time, I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
This movie could have gone so many different ways, have been so much more mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps turning. At the end, when the homeboy blows up,
I
was like,
I had no idea. I guess I'd forgotten how, like, I was like, how are they going to land this movie? How is it going to, like, finish?
Yeah.
And the blowing up, I was like, oh my God. And you're totally right. Like, that he had the cachet to convince Universal to make this movie wild. And especially at the time, I think Hollywood was making a glut of these, Iraq War, Proud to be American, rah, rah, rah movies, like George Bush literally had just, said, yeah, we're going to go after Iraq and Afghanistan, Al Qaeda, 9/11. Like it was all just wrapped up and we were all supposed to just like kind of, support the troops and XYZ. And it's like in the middle was this one little movie, American Dreamz. And what's funny, you mentioned it before I even got to it, thinking that like, I was thinking today, Omar really is the only one who he's like the most normal. Everyone else is so flawed, and not because of their circumstance. Whereas Omar is flawed because he has, because his cousin, got him into like the camp with the other terrorists or whatever. Like but his heart is truly like, pure, as opposed to everyone else who like literally this middle American girl who has everything in the world she wants, but there were some lines that I caught today that she says, Tweety, I'm not sexually attracted to people, but you can have me if you want me. And I was like, holy shit, like there's so much psychological stuff going on with all these characters.
Totally.
So what was the actual, can you tell me about like, I love the dynamics between your character and like these other, I guess they're just kind of nameless, faceless, quote, terrorists who want you to blow up the president and martyr yourself. And then like the flip of you getting to LA and hanging out with Omar's cousins and parents, and they are just fully LA theater geeks. I think, what's his name? Iqbal is just maybe one of the funniest characters in the movie, who is a full Broadway nerd, and is trying to like get you to win one, but also wants his career to blow up as well. What was that like to kind of go back and forth between, the stereotype cliche Middle Eastern characters and then kind of going into like these more American Middle Eastern characters?
Yeah. Well, the one interesting thing was with Shohra Avdashlu, who played my aunt in it.
Yeah, she's incredible.
I actually, growing up here in LA, heard her husband Hussein Tozi, they had, for years they would write and do their own plays here in like different theaters in LA, and big crowd Persian, and it'd be like in Farsi mostly. And so I grew up seeing her plays.
Wow. With
her husband, and met them as a kid growing up. And so I was already had like a somewhat of a relationship. Like, she didn't know me, but I knew her. And
right.
It was, and their stuff was always funny and always fantastic. So like getting the chance to work with her was already just was so cool. Like for me, like working with Tony and Noreen, even when we were not, let's start here. The first thing we ever shot was the scene in the mall where we're walking around and they're buying expensive sunglasses. So that's the first thing I ever shot on a major film. Mm-hmm. My first time being on a major set, showing up, going into the makeup, and Tony is that big character. Like, he is such a larger than life character. So in a way, they kind of, even when we weren't shooting, I don't know if they were just having fun but they kind of were those characters in a way. Mm-hmm. And I kind of was Omar in a way, a fish out of water, quiet, checking everything out, being very gracious to everybody. So it felt like the dynamic between the three of us felt kind of like the dynamic between those characters. And then when we were doing the things, the terrorist camp stuff was the last thing I shot. Mm. So by that time, it was like the last day we did all the terrorist stuff. I didn't really have an emotional connection to that, but the scenes I had with the terrorist crew, actually, like, the experience was very relaxing and nice because Bernard and those guys are just so sweet.
Yeah.
So, as for the character and for me, it's hard when I'm working to I get so. When the day of the scene, I'm so involved in just what needs to be done. The big picture stuff I kind of do before we start shooting. I kind of see the arc. So I'm in it. I'm just kind of moving and intuitively moving with the shooting schedule. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's funny. But the terror stuff was really relaxing and nice because they were just so nice and relaxed. And then the stuff with my cousins was always high energy and a lot of dynamic. And I was always reacting off of their big energy.
Right. I thought it was funny is, so at the beginning of the movie, we see Omar being a, quote, bad terrorist, keeps fucking up, or, can't do the things. But straight away we see, even seeing that as an American person who maybe doesn't know a lot about the Middle East, and all you see is Al Qaeda, bad terrorism things. But then seeing someone fail at being a terrorist, it's automatically humanizes. It's oh, this isn't a scary person.
That's so true.
It's a human. And then and then to take it even further, Paul decides to have this camera crew who are recording it. And it's these camera crew terrorists who are literally acting like a Hollywood director and calling cut in places. And it just immediately takes the knees out of or the legs out from underneath, oh, this is not going to be like every other movie and depiction of Middle Eastern people. And I just thought it was, so refreshing, because I think even today it's hard. I think a lot of people still expect the very one cliche type of thing when you see a Middle East city or a town or whatever in a movie, right? And I even throughout the movie, you see the main terrorist guy. He starts enjoying the show. Everyone back at the camp are enjoying the show, and
they're like wiping their eyes.
Yeah,
for the heartfelt song.
Yeah,
and then also like one thing I hadn't thought about that. It's interesting you said that about the camera crew, because the other thing to think about is the bomb. Is a bomb that has a red button on it.
Yeah,
it's like bomb. Right here, it's like
it said press here to explode yourself. I think is what it said.
Yeah, it's like that connects to that. It's kind of like the camera crew, where you're taking these things that are really scary and really like twisting it on its head. It's really, I wasn't conscious about it at the time, and now that you talk about it, it's a really smart way to just kind of pervert the whole experience.
Yeah, because even the whole idea that, like, oh, this guy sucks, why is he here at the terrorist camp? And then the guy is like, oh, my sister's cousin, blah, blah. It's like, even like the nepotism of Hollywood and that type of stuff is in there. It's like,
that's true.
It's like Paul is shitting on, this American patriotism, but then also like the Hollywood system and American Idol. It's, and the president, it's like, there's so many interweaving things. I was wondering, obviously the movie comes out and it doesn't do well. Like, I think it maybe made the budget back, but it really didn't make like a big splash. What was your experience, when it came out and hearing, maybe, I think the reviews were, I would say, mixed. I saw, like, if you Google it right now, it says 81% of people like this movie. But then, there are people who, reviewers who were just like, I don't think a lot of people got it. I think that there was not a taste for this type of movie back then. And also the marketing was so crazy. When you look at the trailer for this movie, it's like, what is this movie? Like, I don't know what to expect to see it. I think they were trying to sell it as the, like, Mandy Moore and the hot guy singing, and the president's here for some reason. So once it comes out, like, what was that like for you? And were you disappointed, or tell me about that?
Well, I remember, there was a couple of really amazing moments in that. We got to go to South by Southwest with the film.
Cool.
So I got to go there, and Paul was there, and Dennis Quaid was there, and we showed the film, and it got like, people were this great response. We got up there and talked a little bit. We went out afterwards, and Dennis had bought like kind of T-bone steak, and I was like, I don't know what that is exactly. He gave me cut pieces of the steak, and I got to travel like. And then after they did like the test screenings, people really responded really strongly to my character and Tony's character. So like they flew us out to New York to do the press. I got to do the press junket. So like going, and then like the screenings we did, people were loving it. So that going up to the film was fantastic. And then the opening night at the Grove here on 3rd Street. I went, and I think the theater, maybe 70% of the theater was my friends and family. We went, and I saw the family with this packed house, and people in front, my friends were like literally falling out of their chairs and laughing. So for me personally, like the experience of being there with my friends and my family, and them seeing that work I did, that I was very proud of, was a huge success for me, right? And then when the next, like, after the weekend when the film didn't do well, Paul called me immediately, and he said, I just want to let you know that, I spoke with the studio, and they loved the film, and they backed it 100%, and they still support me in what I want to do, and I support you. You did a great job. And I mean, there was like this idea, like people were telling me, after this film comes out, your life is going to change and you're going to be a star and this and this and that. That didn't happen, but that wasn't really, like, I got to do more work after, and I was proud of the film, and still years after, people contact me about that film and what it meant to them and how much they loved it, and the fact that my friends would hit me up from Paris and show me the billboard in Paris, or I would be in London and someone would be like, oh yeah, were you in that film? And talking to people about the film. So, of course, I mean, my perception is, especially now that I've worked in film since then, that was my first film, so whatever that is, 15 years, like the amount of things that are going to blow up and be huge is actually a very small amount of things.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most important thing is to be able to be proud of the work you did. I've done things that did better in the box office, but not necessarily did I believe in that project as much as I believe in this. So for me, there's no complaints, or I see no negatives for me, because for a person with no experience, well, no, film experience, the amount of life experience I got, the fact every day being on that set, the places I got to travel and the people I got to meet, it was, to me, it was such a gift in my life. Really, there's like it changed the trajectory of my life.
Maybe like one last thing I want to talk about is, there's the song American Dreamz, Dreams with a Z, which to me, I think of, do you remember there was like DiGiorno or one of those pizza companies came out with wings, and
yeah,
turns out that they needed legally to have it say wings because they weren't real chicken wings. And all I could think of now watching this movie was like, these dreams are fake. They're not real dreams. And there's that moment when you and Mandy Moore have this scene at the hotel. It's before the finals. And you kind of get to see some humanity in her for the first time, and how she talks about how she was overweight. And she said if she didn't lose the weight, she was going to kill herself. And so she did it. Yeah. And she asks you why you're doing this. And, it's this one human moment. Then she like snaps back and she's like, I'm going to crush you, but goodbye. And it's, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to like figure out or I want to really make this piece about is just how this movie, was kind of throttling this idea of, we were stuck in this like romanticism about war and sacrifice. You see Chris, I forget his last name, but the soldier character, he goes off to war and then gets his shot, and he like, is this big badass dude, and it's like, dude, nothing fucking happened. And so there's like this romance that I think that was reflected back to us, because I think for a long time, I remember when I was in college and high school, everyone was all about the troops and like the war and blah, blah, blah. And there was no real, like, there was some culture of like, American Idiot and fighting back against George Bush, but like, we never could have known that it would get so much worse just 15 years later. That idea of romanticizing patriotism and being so blind for chasing the quote American dream, and in the end, it's truly all fake. I don't know. I guess I wanted to like ask you about your thoughts on that, and if you, and it's kind of, I guess you said you've watched the movie a lot.
No. The thing is, I definitely I want you to finish, but just so you know, like what you're saying is already making me think of a whole bunch of like, I have thoughts on on all these things you're saying. So did you want to finish your thought? I didn't want to interrupt.
No, yeah. It's just kind of that idea and what you perceive, like you said, you haven't seen it in a while, but you have seen the movie, and just how you think this movie reflects today, thinking about the world we're living in and maybe these past 4 years.
Well, the first thing is talking about that the American dream. The thing is, in a way, my family lived the American dream in that we escaped from Iran. Mm-hmm. My dad was a doctor, was a urologist in Iran. My grandfather was a chief of police of a city in Tehran, in the section of Tehran. We come to this country, we escape, right? We get here illegally. My grandparents get asylum, but my parents and myself don't. So we're here illegally, and my dad has to do all his tests again. He can't just become a doctor. He has to do the residency. We go to Brooklyn, into the Bronx, the one place I would take my dad, because it was during the hostage situation. He does his residency. He had been working at a donut shop. My grandfather was working as a security guard in downtown. Wow. His job was pretty much, it would be middle of the night, it would be this lot. He would go to a phone, say, I'm here. He would do his rounds, come back, go to the phone and say, I'm still here.
Wow.
So then from there, my dad gets his residency, becomes a doctor here, starts his practice, makes a life, has a home, has his business, has a family, you know. We live in Westlake Village, this beautiful suburb. My grandfather opens up a restaurant. For 15, 20 years, he has his restaurant. And so we lived this American dream in a way. And interesting thing was, as I went to college and I started growing up and I started understanding the world more, and I would come home and say, you know, America's doing this and this wrong. My parents were actually offended because America gave us so much.
Right.
So I have that. And then the film itself was a dream to me. And the crazy thing is that last song that I sing, My Way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up a big Frank Sinatra fan.
Wow.
Singing his standards. So I'm singing that song. And then I'm kind of dressed like this kind of Prince Michael Jackson outfit. I used to do Michael Jackson impersonation, right? And then behind me are pictures of my mom and my family. Those are really me in those pictures.
Wow.
Singing this song. My mom was there on set that day. It was like I was living every facet of my dream that day, performing that. So for me, that scene, that final scene for Omar was my dream. In a way, it was the American dream. I never liked the American dream. So for me personally, this film, as a person outside of the context of the film itself, it was that for me. I wanted to be an actor since I was 16. I was working on this film with this crew. So that's my experience of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was really, and I know that like the experience my family had and I had is not the what most people experience. And I think if you look at the film today, in a way, and also kind of what Trump Make America Great Again is like the dream was destroyed and we have to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
Most Americans right now, the idea, like I remember when I was a kid, to me, Ronald Reagan was the hero. I remember in 6th grade singing, I'm proud to be an American, and in P, whatever, in
right.
assembly, and like tears rolling down my eyes. I thought we were the good guys, you know, as a little kid. Most of us thought we were the good guys.
Yeah.
And as you grow up and you start understanding the complexities of everything, and I think America in general, like we've lost that innocence, or we've lost that like, where now we're arguing over the Star Spangled Banner, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I think the film, like you said, it's been really interesting to see it now because in a way it was a precursor to the death of the American dream. You know?
Yeah. And it's funny because you have this great moment at the end when Dennis Quaid's character loses the earpiece, right? And he says, "You sound great, and also, I'm sorry." Like literally, he's able to. He's like, "We're never gonna figure it out in the Middle East," and I just want to say, "I'm sorry."
Ever.
Yeah, ever. And he says, "I'm sorry," and then just that to me was like, wow. Imagine if a president ever apologized for anything that the government did, but then it's your character takes it one step further and he says, "I sincerely hope that's not the case," and you guys have the handshake. And I was like, holy shit, like, you know, the American Middle Eastern, like, relations, like, in my head, I was like, if more people had seen this, I wonder if it would have, like, cooled temperatures down a little bit. You know, maybe people wouldn't be too fucking crazy about, you know, the war and patriotism and Al-Qaeda and whatever, because it's truly so simple. Like, these are just two regular humans who are, you know, put in a spot that they represent so much more. And in the end, it's not, and I just thought about this, it's not the Middle Eastern guy that martyrs himself, blows himself up. It's the U.S. veteran. It's the military guy from the U.S. who does it. And so, yeah, although that stuff is so, the layers to this movie really are moving and incredible to me.
Yeah. I mean, you reminding me of that scene with the president and Omar's like, yeah, man. Like, I want to go back and watch it now. Like, I feel moved just remembering it. It's like, yeah, man, that is a really moving moment. It is. And at the moment, it was just, I felt it in the moment, but it's been long enough where that I can have an emotional reaction to the film again instead of just
right. Oh, there is
watching it.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max right now. And
that is true. That is true. I did get a residual for that.
What's funny, what was I going to say? Oh God, my train of thought has lost me now. You talked about, the precursor to the death of the American Dream. Oh, that was it. Like, in my head, I was like, oh, this movie's such a cartoon. And then I was like, but it's not really, because when you think of the last 4 years, especially, and so it's just weird. This movie works for me so much better now, just because we have really seen how like crazy politics and patriotism can get. And at the time in 2006, we thought things were wild, but like, I think the distaste people had for movies about war and Iraq and Afghanistan, it was just too like sensitive. It was too, like we don't want to go there. We don't want to think about it. We don't like, it's just out of place, out of mind. And then now it seems, especially with, technology and media, it's all in our face all the time. And so now it probably would be more shocking to me. I mean, it was more shocking to me to see the movie now because, it's so real. Everything, we're beyond the peak of American Idol. We are, we're way beyond what we thought was a quote bad president in George Bush, in terms of
unbelievable, amazing.
And that's just, it's just like, it's really, really wild. So I just want to let you know, like, that's where my head is swirling. And that's where I kind of want this piece to go. And just talking about how American Dreamz, is this movie out of time and makes so much more sense, today than it ever has before. And
that's so true. It's kind of like when you see these movies where they try to depict the future.
Yeah.
And then you watch it in the future and you're like, oh, that's how they thought this was going to be. Or so there's a charm and there's an interest in seeing that, like watching Blade Runner and seeing, oh, yeah, that's how they thought space would travel would be.
Right.
In a way, this kind of does that. In a way, you get a sense of after knowing the trajectory of where we've been and kind of getting a sense of how we were commentating on it. It's not even that long ago. That's really interesting. That's really intriguing.
That's all I have. I wrote down all these notes, but we basically hit everything. I just think it's, such a funny and interesting movie. And so, I'm happy to hear that you're still very proud of it and that people, love it as much as I do. And,
and I feel so clear on what this film was to me,
Right.
And so in a way, it was a gift to get that, because maybe I wouldn't have thought about it as deeply if I hadn't.
Right.
I knew intuitively that I connected with it, but
you either were in on the joke or you weren't. And Paul, and it seems like all you guys, I mean, there's that great moment when they make a joke about Mandy Moore and they cut, not about Britney Spears. And then they cut to Mandy and she's like, and I'm like, holy shit, this is so good. And talking about like white trash and how it worked for Britney Spears. And so like, again, if there's a moment in the movie, like you have to get that trigger of like, oh, they're in on the joke and we're all, like thinking on a higher level than just, all the reviews I reading about like, oh, he's this terrorist that wants to blow up the president. I was like, do you guys not see what's going on here? Like there's clearly so much more happening. And I think it's because, I don't know, like there was not enough mirrors up back then to like actually look back at ourselves. And so it was all just like, oh, how can you, this is regular, normal middle America life. And I'm like, no, he named the town Paducah. It's a joke. Like this is all a joke. And I don't think also people were ready for Mandy Moore to be like that villainous and evil and, cutthroat, and people just really didn't get it. And were either like, the conservatives obviously were not going to like it because they're skewering, patriotism. And then if you're a liberal who didn't, get the joke, all you're thinking of is like, oh, how harmful and like distasteful this is about, Middle Eastern people or whoever. And I just think this movie is way more nuanced than both of those takes.
I'm happy that I got to connect and we got to do it quick like this. It's really great. I'm really happy we got to talk.
Yeah, me too. I mean, even just personally as like a fan, this has been really rewarding because, you know.
Man, I really appreciate it. And it's funny because right now I'm getting my master's and I'm starting to write, so I'm getting master's in screenwriting.
Oh, excellent.
So because kind of like what Paul kind of taught me too, is like, I want to tell the stories that I want to tell.
Yeah.
And so it's so great because I started being more analytical and critical about scripts, and I've gone back and started like looking at films that I loved growing up and looking at them in this new, more critical eye. But it was so great to talk today and be able to think about a film that I did.
Yeah.
Because I've never gone back and looked at it critically like you have. It was just an experience. So hearing the way you saw it, and kind of that's where I've been in this semester of looking at films in this way. It was really just kind of rewarding, exciting to think about, it'd be so cool to bring this film to class and have people do the work that we were just doing, you know?
Yeah, because it's like, I think, again, people would have thought the movie would be like dumb, you know, falling and like little things here and there. But like, and it is dumb seeing a quote terrorist dancing in the middle of a tent, but like, it means so much more than that. It means like, you know, this is a human being and, you know, seeing there are all these layers to it that I just thought, you know, there is more to this movie, and I'm hoping, you know, other people will see that too.
Yeah, well, it's a real pleasure, man.
Yeah,
Stay in touch.
For sure.
Good luck with everything over there. And keep me posted.
All right. Thanks. Good luck to you too.
Let me know.
All right. Goodbye.
Oh my God, Louie, that is a really excellent interview, and I just love that you threw caution to the wind and you got it. And you know, what a good, nice guy to sit down and talk to you in a very candid manner.
Yeah, he was so nice. I loved all the... First of all, I was really like kind of like emotionally taken by his story of his family and his parents. We got like towards the end talking about his American dream, his family's American dream, and peeling back the layers of what this movie is. And so I should have said this before, but like if you should go out, watch it. It's on HBO Max, like I was said in the interview. So the movie is available to you guys if you want to watch it. And I don't know. I was deeply, weirdly obsessed with this movie when I watched it. I watched it 3 times since our episode for Many More, and in preparation for this conversation with Sam. So I don't know. Join me in this weirdness, in obsession with this weird American Dreamz movie. And thank you, Gavin, for letting me. I don't know. I was like, I texted Gavin. I was like, do you think our listeners would want to hear this?
And I was like, I love bonus content.
And see, you know, if we were a Patreon gang, this would be a Patreon bonus situation. But we absolutely are not, because that seems like a lot of work.
Yeah. Also, it's the holidays, so like, I don't know, this is a gift or whatever. You just can't exchange it for anything else.
You really cannot. Do not ask me to slide into any other celebrities' DMs. This was a total... I don't know what this was. This was me being very... stalker, a stanny. I'm an American Dreamz stan.
Also, I'm no longer allowed to slide into Chris Evans' DMs.
Yeah, legally. Before we go, I do have to think, like, I was listening back to the interview and I was like, I literally did not ask him once about what it was like to work with Mandy Moore. Did not. I was more interested about talking to him about, you know, going to see theater.
What it was like to work with Seth Meyers.
Yes, exactly. the icon, the legend. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. And we're going to have a regular episode coming up soon, which is going to be our best and worst of the year.
But in the meantime, if you want to find us, you can tweet at us at The Mixed Reviews.
Or on Facebook, just type in The Mixed Reviews.
You can email us at reviewsmixed@gmail.com.
We're also on Instagram, _mixed_reviews.
And if you want to listen to us like you have been doing, feel free to subscribe to us on a multiple of podcast platforms. There's Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and so many more, even Audible.
Even Audible?
Even Audible. And if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, make sure to stop by and leave us a 5-star rating and write us a little review. And we'll take that review and we'll read it on the show.
Thank you guys so much. And we will see you in 2021.